What is up, Lighthouse Middle School? How you guys doing? Hope you guys are having a fantastic Wednesday. Wherever you are, I'm glad that you're there. Connecting with your leaders, your friends, and hopefully taking a step forward in your faith, whatever it is that looks like for you. Just a couple of quick things before we hop into our lesson for tonight. Of course, I've got this QR code that you can scan that will take you to a form that you can fill out. And next month, the question that I want, or the questions that I want to be answering, have to do with relationships. So dating, sex, sexuality, gender, all of that sort of stuff that I'm sure you guys have lots of questions about. Go ahead and scan this QR code, fill it out. And of course, if you don't fill it out, I don't have anything to talk about. So please fill it out. I'd love to talk about it. And this will be actually on February 14th, which is the second Wednesday in February. And it was also obviously Valentine's Day, so it makes a lot of sense for us to talk about that. But the reason that it will be on the 14th instead of the first Wednesday of the month, which would be the 7th, is because on Wednesday, February 7th at 6 o'clock, we are having an all-in concert put on by myself and some people from the worship team. It's going to be a bunch of songs that I have written, and obviously that will kind of replace normal youth group. And so I would really encourage you, it would really mean a lot to me if you came to that. It's $2 at the door. It's kind of a fundraiser for our all-in campaign. So I'd love to see you there. That'll be, like I said, Wednesday, February 7th, kind of normal youth group time, 6 o'clock. Probably will wrap up about 7:15, somewhere around there. Would love to see you there. I think it'll be a great time for our church. So, yeah, scan the QR code for February 14th for our Q&A on Valentine's Day, Wednesday prior, February 7th. All-in concert. Love to see you there. With that out of the way, let's get into our lesson for tonight. So, welcome back to our second week of our series, Justified, where we're looking at what we do when we get angry through some of our favorite comic book heroes. And typically, a comic book hero's desire to help comes from an event in their past. Their motivation to act is rooted in their origin story, which we already looked at a moment ago when we did our Poorly Explained Origin Stories game, right? And last week we learned that it is normal to feel angry. When we get angry, though, we can pause and ask God why we feel that way. When we do this, God teaches us about ourselves, our feelings, and what it is that we care about. We also allow God to show us why we're mad and the pain our anger might be trying to protect. And we may see injustice in our community, at school, or on the news, and want to do something about it. It would be awesome to have superpowers so that we could help in big ways. So, here's our question. If you could have any superpower to help confront evil and stop people from being hurt, what do you think it would be? Let's answer this question. 30 seconds on the countdown. Ready, set, go! Now, I imagine many of us have thought about this before because we all see things that we want to make right in the world, and thinking about superpowers enables us to get creative about potential solutions. But superpowers don't automatically rid the world of pain and evil. Sometimes our help ends up hurting more people. And this is what happens to the character Magneto, okay? Now, he is a powerful mutant and one of the main villains in the X-Men comic books and movies, right? And now Magneto was in the Holocaust when millions of Jewish people were killed in the 1940s. And although the character of Magneto is made up, the Holocaust really did happen, right? And it's just this horrible action of injustice and prejudice and just pure evil, right? And as you can guess, Magneto has a lot of anger about that. And honestly, a lot of his anger is justified, meaning that we might understand the reason why he is angry. And even though it's justified, the things that he ends up doing in the X-Men series oftentimes are not. His anger twists and morphs into more hatred. And what starts as a desire to help protect others creates the same forms of pain and evil that he wanted to eradicate. And most likely, you haven't gone through anything like what Magneto has gone through. But we can understand seeing evil and pain in the world and wanting it to act. And when we're angry, it is natural to react. But instead of just reacting, perhaps we can respond in ways that will address the issues better. How can our actions help rather than perpetuate a problem? And whether or not you believe me, Jesus got angry. And there's a story in the New Testament when thousands of people arrive in Jerusalem to celebrate the most important religious holiday for Israelites, the Passover. Crowds came to the temple where the people of Israel believed God's presence was, right? And they were there to thank God for liberating their ancestors from slavery in Egypt. Worshipping at the temple was part of this important holiday. And unfortunately, travelers were exploited by the religious people at that time. The church leaders were creating barriers to worshiping God and even made money from people wanting to go into the temple to worship God. When Jesus sees this, let's take a look at what he does. This is in John chapter 2, verses 13 through 22, starting on page 661. And it was nearly time for the Jewish Passover celebration, so Jesus went to Jerusalem. In the temple area, he saw merchants selling cattle, sheep, and doves for sacrifices. He saw dealers at tables exchanging foreign money. And Jesus made a whip from ropes and chased them all out of the temple. He drove out the sheep and cattle, scattered the money changers' coins over the floor, and turned over their tables. And going over to the people who sold doves, he told them, "Get these things out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a marketplace." And his disciples remembered this prophecy from the scriptures. Passion for God's house will consume me. But the Jewish leaders demanded, "What are you doing? If God gave you authority to do this, show us a miraculous sign to prove it." "All right," Jesus replied, "destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it back up." "What?" they exclaimed. "It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you can build it in 3 days?" But when Jesus said this temple, he meant his own body. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered he had said this, and they believed both the scriptures and what Jesus had said. Now, this is quite the strong response, right? Here is some context, though, to help you to understand why it is that Jesus did what he did. And the people of Israel in Jesus' day typically brought an animal sacrifice when they came to the temple in Jerusalem. The temple leaders created a business selling animals to people at the front doors. To purchase these animals, people from afar needed to exchange their local money for the type used in Jerusalem. Money changers around the temple would charge extra for this service. Like many things in our world today, the people who this hurt the most were the poor. They could barely afford to pay for their sacrifice, much less the extra amount it cost to have their money exchanged. And Jesus saw that a place that was built to worship God, where God's presence was supposed to dwell, was used to make money off of needy people. And we see that this type of exploitation, meaning being taken advantage of, really upsets Jesus. We learn that it's important to take care of the weak and the poor. And we also learn that Jesus places a high value on God's name being honored. When the leaders were using worship as a way to benefit themselves, it undermined true worship of the Lord Almighty. And Jesus wanted to break down the barriers between worshipers and God, and he did this by turning over the tables being used to exchange money. Jesus' anger was about standing up for God's honor and standing up for people being harmed. And Jesus here wasn't reacting, he was responding. He saw something truly unjust, and he acted. Some scholars even speculate that the whip that Jesus used would have taken a while, like a long time, to put together. He wasn't just freaking out in a moment of weakness. He had righteous frustration that he purposefully executed. And instead of reacting without thinking, Jesus connected his logic and his emotions to a response that addressed the problem. One of his values is to lessen the suffering of people without social power. And his action worked to uphold that value. And Jesus shows us that when we have justified anger, we are moved towards action that brings right relationship with God and with others. Jesus showed us that when we respond rather than react to our justified anger, we can find a solution that helps make wrong things right and doesn't cause more harm in the process. And those who were with Jesus the day he overturned the tables would have understood God's justice from when they read the Old Testament. The prophet Amos wrote about God's justice and how working for balance and equality is a way that we can worship God. So this is on page 570, big number 5, small number 22. God says, I will not accept your burnt offerings and grain offerings. I won't even notice all of your choice peace offerings. Away with your noisy hymns of praise. I will not listen to the music of your harps. Instead, I want to see a mighty flood of justice, an endless river of righteous living. Jesus shows us how to put Amos 5 into action. God is not impressed with our worship songs or big Christian conferences if we aren't loving him with all of our heart and showing others love and justice and mercy. There's a problem when we only sing songs about helping others or only talk about bringing peace and do nothing to help or peace. When we do that, we can start to sound kind of like a broken record. Jesus and the prophet Amos say that seeking peace and justice is a way that we worship God. When we get angry at hurt and pain that we see in the world, we can partner with God and become people who see rivers of justice in our neighborhoods and in our world. That sounds pretty great, doesn't it? Our anger is justified when we see systems that harm people. That anger can be the creative fuel that we need to act. Anger lets us know when something isn't right, and we can work to bring about God's justice, because when we are angry, Jesus shows us how we can respond. Now, Christian civil rights activist Ben McBride says, maybe it's not always, what can I do? But who do I need to become? For followers of Jesus, responding to the pain in the world means that we need to become more like Jesus. So here are a few ways that we can start that journey. We can ask, what is wrong? Ask questions about the things that you see. Talk to God about how this breaks his heart. Who is being harmed? And is someone benefiting from the hurt that I see? What about this might make me kind of angry? You can ask what you are learning. Before you respond, spend time learning about the injustice that interests you. Jesus intricately understood how God wanted the temple to actually operate, right? He knew the schemes of the money changers, and he knew about the people who were being harmed by these practices. And this knowledge informed his response. Spend time learning and talking to God about the best way that you might respond. Next, you can ask the people who are being affected. Remember, your actions should help people, right? Jesus is on the side of those without power. And this means that God is already at work in them to repair the wrong things that they are experiencing. So take some time to listen to them. Ask what God is revealing to them about what restoration and peace might look like. And then finally, we want to ask what is next. First, we want to pray. Amos reminds us to pair our prayers with action. Feeling hopeless or powerless in the face of injustice is pretty normal. But action can kind of help cure some of our discouragement. Raise awareness, right? To leaders who have the power to affect positive change, or talk to local leadership, maybe in your school or in your community. And when we see wrong things in the world, it is normal to react in anger. But with Jesus' help, his example, we can become people who respond to the world's injustices with love and knowledge and even hope. When we're angry, Jesus shows us how to respond. That's what I've got for you guys. Tonight we are going to switch it over to small groups, have a discussion about this topic. And I love you guys. I will see you whenever I see you.